There's nothing sexy about it.
No.
Except the stacked cast.
Yeah.
For him to be able to see this, you know, then my mother was able to maybe see something, or to see something that was undescribable for my father.
The war did happen. It's not whether it should or shouldn't. It did happen, and this event did happen, and our job was to recreate it.
Is he peeking or probing?
Speaking with serious intent to probe.
Alpha 2, we might have guys starting to move on our position.
Copy, we're getting a buildup of activity here too.
Yeah, I definitely see weapons at this point.
Yeah, we have definite massing.
Has everybody been asking about the tattoos?
A lot of people have been asking about the tattoos, yeah.
All right. We'll just go on to the next one.
Turn off the light and put on a black light, you'll see it's on my forehead.
That's the thing that you haven't been telling people.
Yeah,
right?
that's commitment.
Where did
Krysta, here.
I am curious where you guys went. Like, was it a shop that y'all went together? Or did you have somebody come and do it?
No, we all went to like different places. I got one right in my armpit.
Right. A big group of us went to one spot.
I did it.
A big group of us went to one spot,
Okay.
and if I'm not mistaken, it was in London.
In Soho, yeah.
In Soho, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A beautiful spot. I forgot what it was called, but amazing spot. Great artists. Yeah,
I got mine yesterday.
yeah.
Yeah.
Are you guys this?
Genuinely.
Okay, really?
Genuinely
Oh, wow.
got mine yesterday, yeah.
And yours is really in your armpit.
Yeah, right here. I'm kidding. No, it's right here.
You know, everybody likes to say they all got along with their co-stars,
Right.
but it seems like there was maybe a deeper bond that was formed here. What do you guys attribute that to?
I think a testament to really Alex and Ray and how they kind of, you know, vetted all of us, you know, before we had the, you know, before we committed to the project. And I think they kind of were just like, I think they knew what they were doing with everyone because it required a certain commitment and dedication and just like a humility, you know, and yeah, these guys, like, I'd do anything for them, you know, every single one. And it really, I think the 3-week boot camp was very formative for us. And, you know, we did a lot of things when it came to learning about brevity, military terminology, military tactics. Like, you know, we all shaved our heads, not because we're like, oh, this is cool, but like, no, you know, the Navy SEALs did it in buds. And Ray said it was a symbolic expression of starting at ground zero. And, you know, it was just, there's just so many things that I could go on.
I think as well, you know, having us stay at a hotel an hour outside of London in a small, beautiful town called Trink, essentially in the middle of nowhere, and keeping us locked in that, in a sense, locked in that hotel together, and that built our dynamic perfectly.
Yeah.
And to take it even further, we had the great pleasure of having Elliot come to visit us and come stay at our hotel. Well, you know, other crew, other directors, there will be other places, and they gave us, you know, a sense of responsibility to hang out with him.
They trusted us.
They trusted us. Yes,
Yeah.
they trusted us to take care of this guy. Not that he needs to be taken care of, but you know what I mean. Like,
But it was, yeah, man. Yeah. It was beautiful.
Do you think there's something maybe too with like the subject matter and just like how heavy it is that maybe that also contributed to the like bond as well?
I think so to a degree, yeah. I think like the responsibility that came with it in terms of like accurately representing a warfare environment and not falling prey to maybe the trappings of like glorifying or romanticizing it, and you know, kind of sometimes a tendency, I think, quite honestly, for people to like make it want to look cool. You know, this was about kind of loss, and this was about, you know, in many ways the negative repercussions of war and those consequences. And so that, you know, meant that we did everything under a geyser of that responsibility, and that does, you know, make it kind of more unifying. And the other thing as well, I really hope people take away from it, which we were, you know, cognizant of, and this also meant that we bonded around it, was, you know, we wanted to make sure that for veterans who maybe sometimes feel slightly misrepresented by how war is depicted, you know, they feel like now they can point to something that will allow them to kind of explain their experience a little bit better, and have folks who, you know, rightly so, have strong, you know, political feelings about war, are at least now able to base their understanding in something that accurately reflects the reality of what it is to be at war, as opposed to based on something that is like, if I can use a term you used well recently, like Hollywoodized, you know?
Right.
That's interesting. So you guys feel like maybe you're kind of walking this line where you're like, veterans are seen in this film, and it's at the same time you're not like making a stance or saying this, you know, you're people who are not necessarily pro-war or pro-military even maybe could see this.
Exactly. I kind of feel like whatever your perspective is on war, the nice thing about this film is that it is just a literal depiction. And there's a distinction between depiction, promotion, and degradation, right? It's like, this is just a literal recreation, and you're welcome to feel how you want to feel about it. I think this affords the opportunity for audiences to do that, because it's guided by truth.
Right. I've said this earlier too as well, but you know, the fact that we didn't have a score in this film, right? The idea of, you know, music manipulating an audience to feel a certain type of way is a perfect example of us not really taking a stance. Right. You know, we didn't manipulate anything. We didn't. I felt like we didn't. We just showed facts, very much so. Showed what happened. Right. Really. Yeah.
Can you guys talk a little bit about logistically? I'm curious, having two directors, like what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
It was thrilling to watch. Yeah. I think when you're working with two men as competent and as talented as them, I think they'd worked together on Civil War previously, but this is the first time that they've directed a film in its entirety together. And it was really fascinating to watch them communicate and to get what needed to get done in the amount of time that they had, and it was very inspiring. I think it had its challenges, I imagine, but from where I was sitting or lying, it looked it was thrilling to watch.
Also, they were just great. Like, in addition to being like obviously amazing directors, they were just really good leaders, and you could kind of go to them with anything, and they were as much in it with us as we were in it with each other, and that was quite a it was just quite a known fact throughout in the way that they were with us and how they encouraged us, and that's quite a rare thing.
That's really interesting. Like, did they kind of, because I would imagine there's a lot of times when you're on set and a director's like having to make these sort of like in the moment decisions or sort of guidance.
Ray was certainly more hands-on in terms of the performances, because obviously he had the expertise there, and kind of if we had a question about what would he have done in that moment or anything to kind of bring some authenticity to a moment that had no dialogue, he was brilliant at that. Alex was, I guess, more on the technical side of it, but I don't think that was his exclusively his wheelhouse. I think that they were both very, very collaborative, but certainly in terms of just the performances, Ray was so generous with his direction there.
I think they also both really trusted one another, you know, so if one person were to, I don't think they did almost need to confer so much, because I think they were both so much kind of in the same
simpatico.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if one were to come and give you direction, I think the other would trust that direction is correct.
And Charles, your father was in the military.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about just, I don't know, how making this movie kind of informed your perception of his life, and if you guys talked about this and things like that?
Right. Yeah. You know, my dad. Yeah, he was in the Army for 24 years, and he had he went on I think 4 or 5 tours. I keep on forgetting, and you know. War and the consequences of war are a tough subject matter to talk about and to really even describe, let alone to your kids. And so for him to be able to see this, you know, then my mother was able to maybe see something, or to see something that was undescribable for my father, you know, and to be a part of that, you know. When you're in it, it's different than when you see it. But, you know, that to me, and then not only that, but now Elliot, which is what motivated Ray, amongst other reasons, to tell this story, was so that he can see what happened to him, other than just hearing, reading transcripts about what happened on that specific day. He can now see it, which is just, you know, it's different when someone's telling you or you're reading about it, but when you can see it, it's powerful, you know.
When you make a movie like this, does it take a sort of emotional toll? You guys filmed for how many days again?
5 weeks.
5 weeks.
Yeah,
That was
so
not
it's
counting the
25.
training.
Yeah.
That is
How many
counting the
shooting
No,
training.
that's not true. So,
Okay.
25?
25, I think. So, yeah, so it was 3 weeks of training, then 5 weeks of shooting.
Okay.
But does it take an emotional toll? I mean, it's not real, and I don't subscribe to. I mean, everyone's got their own relationship with it, but I think that it's important to kind of go home. But the thing is, we went home and we lived together, so we were kind of we weren't living and breathing the material itself, but we were living and breathing with each other a lot, and that was a real. If I say tonic, it makes it sound like we were going into a dangerous place. It wasn't. It was we were aware of the fact that the material itself was so personal to Ray and to Elliot, and it was important that we gave it everything, you know, in terms of the responsibility was really felt. So I think the emotional toll was more that of the responsibility that we felt, rather than anything kind of like traumatizing us around it. I would say personally.
Yeah. And Iraq is obviously, in particular, a particularly like fraught subject. And I'm just curious if you guys had any reservations about taking the role, and if so, how you kind of dealt with those.
I personally would have had reservations if this film sought to kind of make light of or romanticize or glorify the war in Iraq. I think what I really appreciated about it was that Alex sought to tell a story devoid of Hollywood grammar, and to the point that you made about the score, like that's just one example of how it's not trying to manipulate the audience into feeling any one thing. It was just a very literal depiction of one event that I think is about as anti-war as a war film can be anti-war. And Ray Mendoza, our co-director himself, says that if you watch this film and it makes you want to go to war, like there's probably something wrong with you,
Right.
So it's just one of many stories, but it's important that it exists in the context of the war films that are available for certainly civilians to watch as well as veterans, because it's a film that offers something slightly different in that it's entirely apolitical and it has no fictionalized elements whatsoever.
And we need to have these conversations too, as a society. We need to have the conversations of what happened in the past, what wars we have been in. And I feel like movies that don't take a stance and that are a sense, like this film, I would say, an anti-war film is a great example to have these conversations, for people to watch it and then come out of the theater and talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the context is set within the Iraq War, but I think the themes and what is explored within it is universal. I think it's about conflict and it's about warfare in itself. It shows the consequences of war. This war happened to take place in Iraq, so I had no reservations about it.
I also think when you're approaching a project that is taking place in war in general, and portraying war, then it was really important that I think it's really important that this film doesn't glorify it. It's very anti-Hollywood, as Alex often liked to put it, in the sense that it isn't trying to dramatize it, glorify it, just paint it in any way that different to what it is and what it was. So I think that is something that I'm very proud of about this film. But yeah,
There's nothing sexy about it,
no.
except the stacked cast.
Yeah.
Romeo, we need evac at our last known position. We have severely wounded. Who's the severely wounded? It's not you. Is it me? Who is it? No, it's not you. No, it's it.
Copy one, we're in contact too. You coming to you or you coming to us? Stand by.
I used to cover breaking news mostly, and one of the things that I was struck by in Civil War was like the depiction of journalists, that especially like a certain kind of journalists especially. And I wondered for you, Ray, like if there was something, because obviously there's no shortage of war movies. I wondered if there were like certain tropes or things that you were trying to avoid in this project, that as somebody with that experience.
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, it wasn't hard to not avoid them. I mean, we were sticking to the truth. This is for Elliot, and I wanted to recreate this because he doesn't remember. So that a lot of the ways that kind of gave us these parameters or these kind of bumpers that didn't allow us to do those mistakes. But I think some of the obvious ones, like when we watch movies, is I think maybe getting the culture a little wrong or a cliche line in the middle of combat that we just don't throw to each other. things like that. It's not an accurate representation. It's a little like disrespectful.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of training to be able to be functional in a combat environment, and I feel it essentially says like, oh yeah, I don't know.
It's just, people are just like winging it or something.
Yeah, it just takes a lot of training and exposure to be able to like do these very high skilled jobs, and so yeah, it's just not represented well.
And there were lots of moments of like levity in this and humor. I wondered if you guys could talk about the decision to add that to a film that is so serious.
Well, in a way, the answer to that picks up off what Ray was saying. We weren't really making decisions. What we were doing was interviews. And within the interviews, or sometimes just Ray recounting sequences of events, so his version of a sequence of events. If within that there was something that related to levity, then it was appropriate. We weren't allowed to pretend things happened that didn't happen. We weren't allowed to have time compressions. We weren't allowed to create characters that didn't exist or take characters out that did exist. We just had to do everything we could to be as truthful as possible. One of the interesting things, but I suspect in a way everyone anticipates this, is that even under extreme stress or sustained tension, which might exist before a contact, but the tension because there's an awareness that there might be a contact. Humor is a release valve. We all do it, and of course the soldiers do too. And so it's fair and appropriate to include it.
Yes, as a journalist, I can see that happens. So, yeah, I get that. And something that was interesting to me, both this and Civil War, like we kind of start in the middle of this conflict without any like context of how we got there. And obviously, in this case, we kind of have history and we know about,
Well, exactly. Well, exactly.
Yeah.
There won't be that many adults who are not aware of the historical context, I assume. I mean, there'll be some, but you don't make films to accommodate every single person. Maybe somebody, at least an adult, who has no awareness of the Iraq War or just wars in general, shouldn't watch this film.
When you guys set out to make this film, did you see it as like a stance on whether the war should have happened?
I'm going to just quickly say the war did happen. It's not whether it should or shouldn't. It did happen, and this event did happen, and our job was to recreate it, not just specifically relating to the Iraq War or Ramadi in 2006, but there are elements of what Ray explained and what we showed that would apply to a war that was fought in the 8th century. Being frightened, badly injured, people trying to keep other people alive, and what that means. That's universal. But sorry, Ray, you should speak to it.
No, that's great.
The screening that I went to was the one that was at the American Legion Theater, which was really,
a great one to go to.
It was really interesting to see like the community that was there. And I know you guys are doing a screening at Coronado, right? Talk a little bit about the idea behind like wanting to sort of present this to this specific community.
Yeah, I mean it's a shout out to them. I think obviously I have like primary, secondary, and tertiary reasons why I did this film. One primary is Elliot, who doesn't remember, but also it's kind of it's not the only voice, but it's a voice, and I think to be able to use it, if you represent the war accurately, or combat accurately, or these kind of archetypes that exist when rounds start being exchanged, right? There's guys who are afraid. There's guys who step up. There's guys who are confused. You can find these archetypes, and so when you do that, you represent the sounds, you represent the scenarios accurately and authentically. People tend to use that as a voice or a way to explain things that maybe they haven't figured out. I was one of those people. When I first got out, I didn't know how to describe it. I avoided talking about it, not because I didn't want to, but because it just brings up questions that I didn't really know how to answer yet. And I think a lot of times we would love to try to use movies, but I think up to date, you can't. They just don't exist. So I think that is. So to your question, the veterans, if we use the Elysian, it has resources, and that's where we all gather together sometimes to celebrate life or death or so on and so forth. And the veterans have helped me. I use veterans a lot in films and projects I do, and they've helped me get to where I am. And this is my way of giving back. And if their opinion matters most to me than any other one, so I wanted them to see it first.
And the response has been positive for the most part from them?
Yeah, overwhelmingly positive, yeah.
And I'm curious, just to wrap up, for you guys, obviously you grew up in different countries. Did you guys have conversations and learn from each other about like different philosophies that were informed? You know what I mean, like about the military in particular? And
I did.
Really?
Yeah, he didn't have much to learn about the military, it turned out, but I had a lot.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I learned an enormous amount. I probably learned more on this film than any other project I've worked on previously. And it's not just to do with technical stuff. It's to do with the most important sort of capacity that people have, which is empathy. Having a closer understanding of these people and their culture and what they go through.